The info space is dying, and so if you're in the space, this video is going to be a really important video to watch because I'm sure, like myself, you've actually watched a lot of people who were actually at the top of the space completely fall off, that no one really talks about anymore. If you don't remember, if none of them come to mind, think about, for example, Serge Katari. He's from like an insider source, barely doing any numbers at the moment, and he was at the top back in the day. And a lot of people have fallen off really lately. And so in this video, I'm going to be talking about how to kind of get to that top and then avoid falling off, because info is one of those industries where you can get to the top. Oh, by the way, I haven't really told you my credentials. Right now, I'm doing 76K a month at 16 years old in the info space, and I'm helping my clients who are all in the info space, coaches, make millions of dollars. So now that I'm credible to tell you this, I'm gonna be telling you like how to get to that top and how to like actually stay there and not fall off, because some of these people that I've helped, I can't really talk about like NDAs, contracts and things, but I have collaborated with some of the biggest people in the space, and I can tell you like the biggest thing is that staying at the top is a lot harder than getting there, because info is one of these unique industries where you can get to the top really quickly. If you think about industries like oil and like gas, it's really hard to get to the top. It can take decades, literal decades of putting in a ton of work. But with info, you can literally do it in a year, 2 years, even a matter of months for some people, right? So getting to the top is pretty easy, right? It's literally just a matter of managing your time correctly and managing your financials correctly, knowing where to put money, where to put time that will generate a return, being able to risk, and just being consistent. And that's really all it takes to get to the top. After working with like a lot of people who, once again, some of these people you probably know I can't speak about, the biggest thing with those people was just consistency and not being afraid of risk, of risking money on ads, of risking money on different hires, and just really building it like a real business. Okay, so now that I kind of talked about that, I'm going to be talking about why I think info is actually dying. And so I think that most people are actually just too short-term thinking. They don't think for the long term, and that's why they fall off. People like, for example, Serge. All Serge was doing was creating new unique mechanisms and selling to his audience, and now not many people trust him, and he's fallen off. People fall off because they make short-term decisions. And people who stay relevant, think about who's relevant. Iman. Iman is probably one of the most long-term thinking people in the space. Like lately, he's really branded himself, if you've been kind of paying attention to what he's doing, as this credible person who, people like and people trust, and, really honest guy, where that's how he's kind of framing himself for the long term. But in the background, he just did an event where he sold $10 million of a 1.5K ticket price, and his clients collectively, out of I think 10,000 people bought it, his clients collectively collected $2 million, and 90% of that 2 million was people he just kind of put in there who were already making money just to jack up the numbers. So Iman just pulled one of like the most unethical, not really unethical, I don't want to call it a scam, because obviously people got the product, maybe they didn't implement to the best of their abilities, but there's a big gap there. And Iman, understanding this, has now gone to brand himself as this honest guy, right? Oh, I bought consulting.com just to give my clients this free course there, right? That's how he's framing himself, so that his brand will survive for the long term. And so most people I see just don't really think for the long term. They let scarcity get to them. They let the appeal of quick cash get to them. And so long term, their brand falls off. And aside from all these things, a mindset principle, because I see it happen so often with even people who, are pretty established, where they forget what got them to their level of success. So they forget what actions actually took them there, and they start focusing on other actions. And that's like the number one way. If you want to fall off, just do that. Just stop focusing on what got you to where you currently are, and start focusing on shit that has no proof of concept, frankly. So how do you kind of go about succeeding long term, and how do you go about thinking long term? I like to go deeper and think about the funnel itself, because most of these people, they like to jeopardize their audience by just running things like VSLs, like webinars, like events, right? Quick cash grabs. We're just trying to throw these people into a funnel, trap them, and get them to pay you. Like it's literally like capturing a lead. Like it's just a crazy way of kind of wording it, right? Anyway, the way you go about succeeding in the long term is by not even directly pitching people in that manner, not doing events, not tarnishing your brand name, but keeping this strong brand name. And I call this an ecosystem where You sell behind closed doors. And I'll get to how you do that in a second. But on the front end, you don't want to run webinars, you don't want to run events, you don't want to run VSLs. You just want to be yourself to create the right content, create the right ads, do the actions that got you to that level of success, and don't even pitch much to the normal eye, right? Just keep building that certainty, building that trust, showing a ton of results as well, client results. That's cool. And how do we convert people? With one-to-one human connection, but we leverage it. So you can hire someone called an appointment setter to literally reach out to everyone who is interacting with your personal brand. And then behind the closed doors, you can sell to them. And the conversion rate is way higher because they think they're actually talking to you, someone they've been looking up to, someone they trust, someone they like, someone they respect, and someone who's not just trying to sell them a course through a funnel, through a webinar, right? And so the level of trust is going to be so much higher that when this setter reaches out and when this setter initiates the one-to-one human connection, they're far more likely to convert because they think they're talking to you, right? And so the conversion rate is way higher and the amount of leads is way lower. You can have such a low amount of leads to produce such a massive amount of conversions. So this is the strategy to run in 2025. And so the best part about this, and quite possibly my favorite part about this, is now you don't need to be famous. Now you don't need to be absolutely massive. You don't need to, expose yourself to the entire market where there's no more, people in the market left to actually work with. You can keep it really niche. You can keep it really small and over time expand. How? You become the authority in your niche. You become the person who dominates this small subsect of a niche, right? For example, my client Matt, we took him to 70 calls in his first month from 0. And in the last week, he was able to book 29 calls. His top day is 7 calls, whilst having an audience of 4,000 people and just running, direct ads to this ecosystem. So we had such a small, ecosystem of people who were nurtured, who were liking him, who were trusting him. And what this group of people was first responders, people who, were working this 9-to-5 job as a first responder, a cop, a SWAT officer, a policeman in the military, whatever, a small subsect of the 9-to-5ers who haven't been touched, they haven't been tapped. No one helps first responders, all right? So we simply made him the expert for this sub niche where there's tens of millions of people, but it hasn't been targeted before. And so all of a sudden, he hasn't even used the entire market capitalization. And for the long term, after really, taking over this first responder industry, then for the long term, he can rebrand himself to do this whole 9-to-5 space. And then eventually the unaware market, right? People who, aren't aware they want to get rich, aren't aware they want to make money online, okay? My point here is that you don't need to go massive now to scale. You can have 10,000 followers and make $1 million a month, literally, okay? Whilst having all these followers convert in the DMs. This is the new generation of info. This is actively happening, and I am doing it for my clients who I talk about publicly and some who, once again, I can't really talk about. You've probably seen them though. And if you want to watch how I do it and watch it in action, subscribe to my YouTube. I literally make daily videos right now breaking down how I'm doing all these things and how personally I'm doing 76 grand a month at 16 years old. So subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one. Peace out.